All right, so we're recording. What's the date today?
The 17th.
Hi everyone, today is the 17th of April and I'm just going to go around. I'm Charlotte Pascoe from Stocktown Lego General Manager.
Sadhana Smiles from Harcourts.
I don't know which way we're going.
No. You can go next then.
I'm Leah Calnan from the REOV and Metro Property Management.
I'm Hannah from Independent in Canberra and also REIACT.
I'm Sophie Lyon from Gill Sophie Lyon and also the REOV.
Beautiful. So today we've got a couple of things that we wanted to cover off on based on a few changes that have happened and some feedback that we've received from staff and people within the industry. Sadhana, one thing that we talked about before, which I think is really relevant, is around the differences from state to state. So do you want to touch on that as you did earlier?
Yeah, I think we're just got to be really aware, particularly when we're talking to our clients, landlords who may be living in different states, that every state legislation has been different. It would have been wonderful if the federal government just came out blanket and said, this is what's going to happen in the country for the next 6 months, but that hasn't happened because we do have different legislation in every state. And just as an example, I had one of my Queensland owners email me the other day to say, you know, this is great what's happening in Queensland, let's all get in the bandwagon and send an email. And I had to say to him, well, we're actually in Victoria, we're not doing that. So just to be aware when you're talking to your clients who are from interstate that they may be hearing something quite different, but what you're applying in terms of their investment and their tenancies is quite different. And I've actually got a spreadsheet across all the 7 states. And when you look at it across the board against each of the items, there is very little that is similar across all the 7 states.
Mm-hmm. So I think it comes down to that communication point, right? So instead of just jumping into what you think you know, which I think property managers just kind of go into autopilot because it's the 50th time or the 100th time we've had this conversation. For them, it's the first time we've had the conversation. So just stop and take breath, ask them what their knowledge is, how much are they understanding of what's going on, work out as well where they live. And if they're in Queensland or New South Wales or they're in a different state to where the property you're managing is, just remind them of that. And
the reality is, Charlotte, though, if you've kept good communication up with your owners, they shouldn't actually be asking you those questions anyway. I mean, the reality is most business owners and good property managers should have kept their owners up to date in terms of what's happening in their portfolio in their state. So technically, they should be across it.
Yeah.
I think you also, a lot of owners will just assume that whatever is happening in the state that they live in is applicable across every state. So I think that's, yeah, and that's fair enough because that's all they know, that's all they understand. So yeah, it's definitely an issue that people need to really think about.
I think you can only operate in the known knowns at the moment too. So you know, there is a lot of grey in all the legislation. So you know, I think it's perfectly okay to say to a client at the moment, look, we don't know, we're waiting for some more clarity on that, we're waiting for an understanding of the, you know, the process, the legislation, the directives, all that sort of thing, because it's even more dangerous if you're not 100% sure on what you're saying, and then you end up in all innocence giving misinformation rather than assisting the situation.
And I think it's coming back to the old, make sure you follow up your conversation with an email as well, because I think if they've got a tenant who's asking for a rent reduction, for example, and you jump into, here's the legislation, this is what we normally do, this is what we know right now, this is what we're trying to work through, we don't really know that. You hang up the phone and go, high five, great conversation. They hang up the phone and go, so what did they say? So I think you've just got to make sure you go back, send a quick, you know, even if it's just a quick one-liner, summarize and say, just following on from our conversation, I just wanted to clarify these points. If you've got any questions, if there's links that you want to send through about government or information or what's happening on, obviously not giving financial advice, going back to that, but just trying to give them as much information so they can read up on it and having the open door policy. Then hopefully if they go away, they have a question and then they try and explain it to their partner. They're actually going through your email with knowledge. In addition to that, in terms of calm, we talked the first time we caught up about trying to keep the calm. And I think, you know, I talked to a lot of people about how many rent reduction applications they're getting. Are they slowing down yet? And most people are saying no, that they're still coming through thick and fast. Have you guys found the same thing?
Yeah, we had a massive flurry of them straight after Daniel Andrews' announcement. So a lot of emails, a lot of calls. I think one of my team got 67 emails about it. So it's just people saying, now they've been given the 25% off their land tax. I want that now. When am I getting this? What's happening? And obviously the landlords are in the same position that they have to go away. They have to look at their financial situation. They have to look at how this is going to impact them. They probably have to get financial advice. There's a lot of people who really need to think this through and aren't able just to make a knee-jerk reaction of, yep, give them a month's rent free.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what you guys have found, but a number of our landlords have also been impacted with their employment. They're actually out of work as well. So for their tenant to be in hardship and them not to be able to provide any assistance is another element that we're starting to see sort of unfold as the weeks go on as well.
Mm. And it's not a tax deduction, and that's where it could be easily misunderstood from a tenant that I'm going to have a reduction in my rent, so therefore the owner can claim it as a tax deduction. It's actually less income. So I would encourage property managers to be really careful of the language that they might use in that space, because it's tricky, and you should always be referring the client back to their accountant.
I think that's a big thing. I, with my own personal circumstances, sat down and went, okay, if I've got this going on with mortgages and rent with my tenant and so forth, this is what I'm spending I don't manage a portfolio, so I'm 24/7 trying to understand what's going on, how we apply it, and then how we provide assistance. But even I'm reaching out to my accountant saying, okay, can I just get you to clarify, because what you see over here is potentially a hypothetical situation, but then you apply it to your own situation. And there's so many little intricacies about what that means now and what it means later, that I think we all have to remember categorically, you are not an accountant, you are not a financial advisor, and it's okay. In fact, it's very much encouraged to be quite open about that and say, I'm not an accountant, I can't give you personal advice. What I can do is try and find a solution with your landlord or with your tenant or whatever it might be, but I can't advise you on what that should look like. There are people out there obviously who have been giving a lot of advice, and that's now come under scrutiny. So I think, again, we're going to be watched on that. So just be really careful what you say, what you do, and particularly what you put in writing. And don't assume if you're a tenant. Sorry.
I was going to say, and where you're getting your advice, I tell you, every day when I see another forum on a different social media platform, I swear it just gives me another heart palpitation that, go to the source. Ring one of the 5 of us, ring your, go to your franchise manager, go to your, somebody who's in the know, I don't know what you would Google, go to your REI, go somewhere where you're going to get educated and knowledgeable advice for today.
Yeah.
Please don't ring a property manager that's been in the role for 6 months who might send you on this path, and you should be on that one.
You make a good point there, Leah. I mean, I've actually now made the decision not to follow the forums, because some of the things that you see on there and the advice that's being given, it's one of those situations where none of us have been through a pandemic before, where the entire globe has come to a standstill. So you don't have a source of information in the one place, and everything is moving very, very fast. And what the truth is today is going to change again tomorrow. And so I think what we've got to do is go to a consistent source of truth. So that could be your REI in your state, it could be your franchisor, it could be your independent agency, and there's a lot of those around, but you need to consistently go to that one source of truth so that you get consistent advice around it. And whether it's the REI, whether it's an independent franchise group or an independent boutique agencies, and we're all part of those in this chat right now, we've done the research, we've done the work, we've got a lot of the answers for you. And if you don't belong to one of those networks, then reach out to the REI in your state, because that's what they're there for right now.
And I think going on from that, I actually had a discussion yesterday with somebody who is working for an independent. I was providing some help on a situation. And they said, I think I know what to do. And I said, let me put it this way. When you're working for a big organisation, You have a group of people who are spending their life dedicated to getting answers, understanding there's so many different versions. We're reaching out to people, talking to people, doing stuff like this. So the information we have is going to be, you know, much greater than you trying to work it out for yourself. And I think the message there is, as Leah said, anyone is welcome to reach out to us. If someone picks up the phone and go, hey, I've got a problem and I don't know how to fix it, I know everyone on this call would be like, it doesn't matter where you're from, so long as it's the right state. It doesn't matter where you're from, what can we do to help you? And I think the Real Estate Institute is a really, you know, big point. And I know there's a couple of people here who are part of the Real Estate Institute quite heavily. So it's not a sales pitch, but without the Real Estate Institutes that we have, the industry would be in a very different situation today if we didn't have them working behind the scenes. So I strongly encourage you that if you're not a member, sign up. It's not ridiculously expensive at all, but the amount of support, help, guidance, documentation, everything that you're going to get, particularly over the next 6 to 12 months, is going to be worth its weight in gold. So if you're not part of a Real Estate Institute, I strongly suggest that you reach out, join, because all of a sudden, so many of your questions will be answered, you know, overnight.
And can I just say, thank God Victoria has a property management background person as their REI president. I can't like thank God every day because I think we'd all be in the, I'm not going to swear, poo if that wasn't the case.
But I think it goes to show the value of the institutes. You know, I think in the past they've not been given enough respect or weight because everything's going as it was. And I think seeing the way that each of the institutes have responded to this and their reach in terms of government, all the different agencies, any individual agency can't get that same reach. So I think that's a real confidence in the source of truth that we're looking for. So I think that's been a real benefit in this.
Yeah. So I don't sit on the board. I've got nothing to do with it. So it's not coming from a place that benefits me. I'm just saying to everybody, go and join if you haven't.
You can do our elevator speech. Thanks, Charlotte.
Yeah. My pleasure. So I think, you know, going on from that, we were talking as well about that whole perpetual dream of being able to work from home and how wonderful it is, and how we've spent years in this industry just going, if I could just work from home just a couple of days a week, you know, I'd be so much more efficient. And then it's kind of been a smack in the face of how it's actually really hard to work from home. I think there's very few people who can do it and do it well. It takes a lot of discipline, and I think a lot of people are struggling. Sadhana, you were talking about your structure, how you've got people, some at home. Do you want to talk about, you know, what's happening with you?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting because, you know, you're right, we talked about it, and then overnight, bang, we all have to work from home or, you know, do a mixture of it. In my corporate business, we sent everybody home probably about 4 weeks ago. In my own business, we've got one of our team members working from home because she's pregnant. So we sent her home again 4 weeks ago, and she is climbing the walls. And then there is 2 of us in the office all the time, and then the casuals come in and out. I think one of the things, and, you know, we've done a lot of conversations and training around this within our own network, but working from home requires discipline, and you have to, you know, you have to get up in the morning and put on your work clothes and put on your work makeup and have a spot in the house where you go to do your work. You know, some of us have kids at home at the moment, so you've got to look after the homeschooling as well. And it's about having those pockets of time carved out to have the discipline around, you know, if I have to wake up at 6 a.m. and work through, like one of my team members in Queensland, she's got a young kid at home. She gets up at 6 a.m. and works from 7 till 1 in the afternoon, and then swaps over with a partner who does from 1 till 7 in the evening kind of stuff. So there's all these things you have to do, but you need more discipline at home and more structure at home than you need in the office. And the other big thing around that is the connection piece. So in our business, Shelley's on the phone at 9 o'clock with the team. They have lunch together, and then at 4:30 in the afternoon is the connection piece. And on a Friday afternoon, we all do virtual drinks together. But what's been interesting is over the last 3 weeks of that happening, they've got themselves into a routine around that. At 4 o'clock or 4:30, we get the text message, you know, are we Zooming today? And so for those of us in the office who forget that we have to do that, the girls at home are reminding us. So it's interesting how quickly you do get yourself into some sort of a routine.
Speaking of working from home, sorry, my 4-year-old is begging for some lollies, so apologies. I had I had a session with our group the other day, and there was 50 of us sitting there trying to do some training. And my son asked for 57 bananas. My dog escaped. No one was home. So it is hard. I think we've all got our own challenges.
I've got a trading right now. The anxious dog sitting on my lap. I get it.
I'll take the dog. But I think, with that, we recently, I've created KPI accountability sheets, but working from home versions for property management and for sales. So each of the offices can then say, right, here's your day. What are you doing? What rent reductions have you got? And actually documenting it and writing it down. What worked, what didn't work, what you've got to work on tomorrow, and sending that back and then having a discussion, because I think if you don't have an accountability, if you're not naturally that disciplined person, and I think particularly for PMs that are new, you're not used to, you're always looking for guidance, you're talking to the other people in the office asking for answers. If you don't have that, you have to, I guess, work it out yourself a lot more than what you would have had to do earlier. And you're not in a natural flow. Ideal calendars, I think if you've been doing property management for a long time, you don't have one because it's kind of up here, you come in, you do your things. So if you're new to the industry particularly, I strongly suggest KPIs aren't there for disciplinary reasons. They're there to try and support you and help you to get things done and give you an opportunity to reach out and go, oh crap, I've got to make sure I do this. Or how are you finding it, Sophie? You've got quite a big team there.
Yeah, when you were just talking about the KPIs and things, you're exactly right. It's not there for a disciplinary measure, and it's not there because anyone's checking up on you. Or doesn't trust you, I should say. It's really just there as a guide to kind of keep you on track. And I think everyone's, the saying at the moment is emotionally heightened, which they definitely are. But I think it's nice every now and again to just be able to go back to the process of something and back to a task. I think it's somewhere where property managers being very task driven, it's almost where we feel safe. It's kind of like a little safe zone that I can go there and I can go, okay, I have to get this and this done. And it almost like, ironically, I find it quite calming going in and getting tasks done. I find it just kind of, settles you down. It makes you also feel like you've accomplished something.
Absolutely.
Hannah, you've got some of yours in at work, or is everyone at home?
We've just got a skeleton admin team week on, week off in the office, and that's just to facilitate that key pick up and the contactless key drop and so on. So we have staff sort of floating in and out, collecting files and collecting keys for vacates, but predominantly I think we're up to 4 weeks, but I think we've all sort of lost track as well. Yeah. But I agree with Sophie. I think that bringing it back to simple task, it creates real, I think, clarity. And I think when particularly some of my team on days that they're having a rough day, just saying to them, what have you got to get through? Oh, I've got arrears, I've got this. It's like, well, just start with one. Just do one arrears call, and that's one thing done, and bring it back to basics. I agree with you. I think in my own workload, that's actually helping me as well get clarity by sort of treating it like that.
And I think in terms of the office setup, Leah, I don't know if you want to touch on just following the guidelines for the offices that are open. If you're in a smaller group, if you're an independent, for example, and it's, hey, everyone has to come to work and it's just business as normal, keep going. What would you suggest in that situation that people could do if they're concerned or they're worried they're not following the guidelines? What would you suggest, Leah?
You need to make sure that you are following the social distancing within your office. You need to make sure that you've got really good hygiene processes. Think about your reception area. So most offices who are still operating within an office have stopped the traffic coming in from the street, but there will still be people that need to come in and drop off keys, or, I can just hear a tradesperson out in my office at the minute. So making sure that you've got a process of what the key looks like, the return. We sanitize all of the keys coming in now. We don't have any paper within our reception area. So I'd probably, consider agents who really need to think of that. If you've got, pens, we all have pens in our reception. They should all be gone. The reception should be wiping down, or some team member should be wiping down the photocopier every hour. It's those sort of things. So I think you can still function within the office on, I think most or a lot of businesses businesses I've spoken to this week have got an ABC team rotating, and I think that's good for people's headspace, but it also allows for, you can still function, because, whilst we can be a paperless society or paperless industry, there will still be stuff that hasn't been scanned in, or we need keys, or we need that final checklist, or whatever the case is. So you still need to have somebody in the office kind of directing all those things as well. So got to look at what works for your business, and and the size and the number of the staff.
And I think one thing we touched on is, just because you're not a manager, an owner, a director, doesn't mean that you can't take the initiative with this. So if you note that what's happening in your office isn't necessarily right, there's nothing to stop you going, hey, I've come up with a plan, because this is going to make me feel more comfortable, and our tenants and landlords and everybody coming in. And also, if people come in, if you get spot checked, for example, you want to make sure that you are following the guidelines. Otherwise, you get in a lot more trouble if you're not doing it the right way.
It's even things like making sure you've only got, depending on the size of the kitchen, if it's a kitchen that's less than 4 squares, you can only have one person in at a time. It's just highlighting those areas of a business that you really need to think about. Personally for me, I don't like wearing the gloves, but I sanitize my hands. So I sanitize from when I get out of the car, I've got wipes, I'll wipe down things as I'm coming through, and then I'll sanitize my hands again on my way out. So I know that I'm doing everything I can, but there are other people that use the gloves and want to use the mask. So we've got all these options available, and you've got to make sure that you're using what is best suited for you to make sure that you can follow the processes.
Just a couple of last things before we close off. The first one was the nasty tenants turning into the epically crazy, insane, nasty tenants who are potentially making it really hard to keep going. Hannah, you had a bit of a touch on that. Did you want to go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it's a challenging time, because obviously anxiety and stress is really heightened for people. And I think we have to remember, and I think we touched on this in our first conversation, that at the end of the day, our property managers are working their backsides off. Every team member has an increased workload right now, and I think as leaders in our businesses, it's so important that we're across if those instances happening, because I think we all agree not all business is good business, and if people are just being completely unreasonable to our people, we have a responsibility to do something about that more than ever, because just like a tenant or an owner who's suffering, our team are also under increased pressure and potentially facing these other elements. They might have family members who've been stood down and so on. And I think it's frustrating and disappointing to hear these sort of increasing escalations of some of these conversations, but it's also not surprising. So I think as part of our dialogue as leaders, it's really important that we're drilling into that and we are protecting our people, because we're not sitting there, we're not hearing the conversations in the office anymore. So how are we capturing and how are we finding out that these things are happening if our team aren't telling us directly? Just something that I've noticed in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I think in addition to that, if you as a junior person, let's say, for example, you've got a small portfolio, you're quite new to the industry, if you have a tenant that you're struggling with or a landlord that you're struggling with, and there's no harm in saying, look, I don't have the answers, you're going to have to give me a moment and I'll call you back, and reach out to the person, reach out to any of us. Again, the offer is there. If you don't know how to overcome it, if you're in a position where you're feeling like you're being bullied or pushed, and obviously take us away the fact that they are emotionally heightened, and I think it's not okay, but I think we have to acknowledge that this is going to happen when they lose their job. What do? They're on panic stations, and the first one they call is, I can't pay my rent, because they haven't done the research, they don't understand it, we're struggling to understand it. So they're 55,000 times worse than we are in terms of their understanding. Try and talk them through it, explain it, have a clear conversation with them. And if you can't deal with it, you don't have to be a hero. It's okay to sit down and say, jump on the phone and call your manager, call the director of the office, call one of us and say, I don't know how to deal with it. If you don't want to speak, if you can't have that conversation, I'm sure that the director or department manager would step in and assist in that situation and say, look, this has been escalated. I understand your situation, but we need to work together. They can have that conversation, but you're not a punching bag. And I think it's okay to put your hand up and say, I can't deal with this tenant. Now, don't put your hand up with every single one of them and say, I'm not dealing with any of them because it's all too hard. There are going to be some where it's a bit emotional, and you really have to use those negotiation and compassionate skills that we do every day in property management. But I think, put your hand up at some point and say, this one's too hard. don't take it home. Don't spend your night in tears. You know, I think everybody's probably got a slightly, we might not be going out for lunches and so forth, but I think we've probably got a slightly higher alcohol bill at the moment, and that's okay. But go for a walk every morning if you're not doing it.
Terrible. Terrible to suggest of any of us.
Anyway, if you're, you know, for me, the first couple of weeks, I was thoroughly enjoying comfortable clothes and not getting up and doing stuff and just kind of going with it. But for me to get more motivated, I get up in the morning, I do a gym class online, I go for a walk, I do something to get my headspace ready. So if something does come and attack me or something is a bit hard, I'm in a better headspace to deal with it. So I think if you are feeling like you're getting pushed down by these horrible tenants or landlords that are being unreasonable, put your hand up and say you can't deal with it. But also find ways to, you know, it's something that makes you happy every day. There's not a huge amount you can do, but you can get out of the house, go for a run, do some exercise, do something. Leah, have you seen a spike in negative or difficult situations not being handled as well as you would like? What's happening with your guys?
No, I have to say no, not really. I think if I speak from the industry point of view, I think the agents, sales, property managers, you know, owners, corporation managers, valuers, everyone in between are doing an amazing job. They've learned to be really agile. They're adjusting. They understand when I say or somebody else says, you know, we know this new information has come through. We're working on information. We will get it out to you. And I think, you know, again, if I talk from the REOV point of view, I think we have established really clear pattern that people are seeing communication coming through very regularly. So when I say we're on it and we'll get stuff to you, we do, rather than so there's no just talk about it. So I think no, overall, I'm very proud of the industry, absolutely, because for an older industry as well, I'm really proud that they've been able to move quickly.
Absolutely. And speaking of proud, you have created with yourself and your amazing Excel spreadsheet employees a rent calculator. Do you want to quickly touch on that before we finish off?
Yeah, so we know that after the announcement on this week from the Premier, there was a lot of talk that, you know, rental stress starts when somebody is contributing more than 30% of their income to rent. So we've worked in Victoria, sorry, yep, in Victoria, or REIV. So as Sadhana said yesterday to me, that the V stands for Victoria. another Zoom conversation, that one.
That just shows like how I didn't know what state I'm in right now because I'm dealing with 7 different states at the moment. It's like, oh yeah, it's Victoria.
Still makes me laugh. Yeah, so the rental calculator or formula, whatever we're going to call it, will allow a property manager to be able to plug in what the tenant's income was based on prior to COVID-19 and then in COVID-19, and it will give you a formula to show you how much of your income is being paid towards rent. There is an additional part which will allow the owner to have you can have a conversation with the owner to say, well, we are going to offer some rental assistance to the tenant. What can you afford? Is it $10 a week? Is it $20? Is it X amount per month? And the table and the formula goes on to show you what the out-of-pocket expenses or the loss will be for the owner on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis. So, and I think moving forward, it could potentially be a really good calculator for processing of applications too. So I'm just hoping to roll that out very, very soon, hopefully today.
It's a great
idea. Something you and I talked about yesterday, which would be that would be for internal use, that's not a calculator we would advise people to send out to their tenants as an example. It's something that the property manager would use as a tool to come to a number, but not to be shared publicly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a very easy calculator. You literally have to put in 3 things and it calculates out what that means and you can play around with it. So great initiative, well done.
Yeah, and it will allow owners to see how we've determined the formula rather than, you know, and I think for many, you know, and I've really used the line that Sadhana used a couple of weeks ago, that we've been in this grey for so long, and property managers haven't had really clear understanding of how to create formulas in order to to be able to demonstrate to the owner what the income variation might be and what the rent variation, if any, should be. So I'm hopeful that this will certainly create some black and white for maybe a couple of days.
It's all it takes, just a couple of days break.
Really.
Until Monday, maybe.
Well, thanks everyone for your contribution, and I think the key thing is there that we're all open, you know, to help. So if anyone needs help, please reach out to us. We're all here, and if not us, if it's someone else, if you need help, although Sadhana covers all of Australia, so basically if you need help, just call Sadhana.
Just call her. Yeah.
Sadhana covers the whole world. I thought she was global manager.
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah, I am, but I'm staying away from the rest of the world at the moment.
No, thanks everyone for your time. Appreciate it.